Hello, my name is Preeti Kaur Bhaure and I have been appointed by Wall School in order to find the data analysis of the given school data. And with this presentation of mine, this is having a focus on student absenteeism. So now my presentation is focusing on the main reasons for student activism rate and other research questions that are there in the upcoming slides. So without wasting any further time, let's go to the first slide. That's the introduction. Now, um, in order to complete this presentation and find out all the answers to the research questions, the data was analyzed by using IBM statistics. Just let me find my pen. Yeah, IBM statistics, and I have three research questions. Now, these are the first one: how much student absenteeism is there at our school? I mean, the Vale school. What impact does student absenteeism have on student achievement in reading, writing, and maths EQ, AQ scores? Now, basically, this means the more number of students are getting absent, so what impact does it cost on their academic scores or the test scores? And we have three scores like of reading score, writing score, and maths EQ, AQ scores. And the third research question that was done, like made proposed by me, does the type of transport, now this includes either the child or the student is bused to school, and if he's not, or if he's walking, cycling, or using any other means of transport, and self-identification as FNMI, that is First Nation, Métis, and Inuit, has any impact on absenteeism or not. So without wasting any further time, let's go and start with our table 1. And also the last paragraph, I mean the last presentation slides, includes the summary, conclusion, and few recommendations. So for this I should start with table 1, and the data is too overwhelming, so I might turn off my camera so that we can have a clear picture of all the data which is there on the left hand side of right hand side of the screen. So now this table 1 gives a brief overview of the student demographics. Now the school name is mentioned over here, Wall, and this shows the characteristics of students, and n is equal to 209. Now the table, now with the brief introduction about students demographics, let's look at the main demographic table. The data is represented in percentages of total students for that category. Now these are the percentages and for any category. So for instance, if I say 90% of the students were bused to school, whereas 10% did not use the bus facilities, so I am mentioning over here this checkbox, or I mean this box, right? So this 90 denotes the 90% who used the bus facility, and this 10% were the students who did not. Now, this table 1 has got few interesting demographics to note in the given data. Now, as I mentioned, the first one, there was a huge difference between students who were bused to school and who were not. So 90% of students used the bus facility, whereas 10% did not use the bus facility at all. I mean, they might be using any of the facilities, but this has a huge difference, like 9:1 ratio. Like the second interesting demographic I found out to be of 6.2 students identify themselves as FNMI, whereas 93.8% do not. Now, if I'm mentioning to this line, it comes over here. The next thing over this circle, like 6.2 are saying that we are FNMI, whereas 93.8 are saying no, we are not FNMI. So this is another huge gap that we see in this demographic data. Now, the third and the most important thing we see, 100% of the students did not opt for French immersion plan, which is the notable difference. Like there are none who are having the French or who are taking the French, but 100% they did not opt. Now, what can be the possible reason why they did not opt? And we'll find this question and recommendation in the upcoming slides. And lastly, grade 2 observed the lowest percentage of the students, that is 4.8. Now here is grade 2. We can see JK, SK, 1, 3, 4th, 5th grade having good percentages. Like, okay, they were having 9.1, 10.5 respectively, but grade 2 observed the lowest percentage of students. Maybe there could be any reason why students might not have enrolled for themselves in that year, or they might have changed school, or any other given reasons could be there. But yes, the second grade observed the lowest percentage, whereas we can see the highest percentage was observed by grade 4 and grade 7. Now we can see over the time, if a child attended one school, the percentage was high, and it started to decrease as he started to attend more than one schools. Now this is another interesting demographic data to observe, and without wasting any further time, let's go to slide number 2, that's our table 2. Now with this question, with the brief introduction about the student demographics in the table 1, let's look at our second research question. And this research question could be answered in table 2, that the students absenteeism rates by their characteristics. Now, my first research question is about how much student absenteeism is there at VALL school. Now, this research question should be there like in this table, right? So we have student characteristics. So we have different groups. The first group being the gender, the second group being the grade, the third being the number of schools attended. Number fourth is number of siblings, fifth is median neighborhood income, sixth is individual education plan, seventh is French immersion plan, eighth is bus to school or not, ninth is self-identified himself as FNMI or not. So the table on my right hand side enumerates the students' absenteeism rate defined in each category. Now, in order to get a clear picture of what the student absenteeism rate is, we need to look closely at column 3. So, if I'm saying at column 3, I'm talking about this column. And column 2. Now, this column is column 2, which shows the total number of students in each category. Now, for example, if I say grade 6, this is an example that grade 6 students have an average attendance of 3.795 with a sample of 19 students. So, I'm talking about this grade students. Now, they have an average attendance of 3.795. And now, what's the sample size? The total is 19 students. So why we are more focusing and looking closely at column 3 and column 2? Because it reflects the total number of students in that category, and it is very easier to find. Instead of looking at all the overwhelming data, we can just find out from column 3 and column 2. Now, what were the major key highlights of table 2? So, as in the previous slide, I talked about different categories starting from gender to grade and ending it self-identified as Metis, First Nation Métis or Inuit. So the key highlights for this table too is the number of schools attended has a clear pattern of increasing the student absenteeism rate. Now, the more number of schools the child has attended, it has a student absenteeism rate, but the rate starts to decline when the child attend or the children attend more 4 or more schools. Like, is it even possible? This is a probable question that I need to ask. Like, how is it possible that if a child attends 4 or more schools, the absenteeism rate declines by 1%? That means it goes down to 9.5, right? From 10, it is decreasing. So, another interesting pattern to note in the statistical data is to look at the number of siblings category. So I'm referring to this category, like which shows that the absenteeism rate is decreasing as the number of siblings keep on increasing, which is contradictory. Of course, like um, if I say like number of siblings, like if they were having 0 siblings, the more absent they were, was in percentage 9.164. Now, if they had one sibling, it reduced to 6.984. If they had two siblings, it reduced to 6.786. And if they had three or more siblings, it reduced to 4.212. Now, this is a question that is contradictory in nature, because why and how is it possible? Like, it should be the vice versa or other way. Like, if a child is having more siblings, parents do not get extra time, or parents do not get equal time to divide, and that might hamper a student's school presence or absence rate. He might remain absent for school from longer period of time. But that's totally opposite in this scenario. The more number of siblings, and the absence rate is decreasing. Like, this is very interesting um data to look on. Now, students who were bused to school and versus who were not. So I again turn my camera off so that we can see the correct data. The students who were bused to schools versus students who were not bused to schools had a negligible difference in their absence rate. So I am talking about this group now. So we can see those who were bused to school had 7.111 percentage of absence rate, whereas students who were not have 7.5. So how is this possible? Like, if they are bused, the absence rate should be very less, because of course they're using the bus facility, the transport facility. So they are relying on a public transport, a school bus, which is always on time, never late, never delayed, never cancelled. So I think the data should be very less as compared to students who are not using. But here we can see that there is no difference. Like, there is difference, but a very minute difference. Okay, now the next interesting like pattern or highlight we can observe is for the FNMI students have less absence rate when compared to their non-FNMI counterparts. Now I am talking to this last group, like those who identified themselves as FNMI, they were absent for the school were 3.869, and those who did not identify themselves as FNMI, they had almost the more than the double percentage, right? The It was around approximately 7.376, like more than just the double. How is it even possible? Like, it shows the meaningful differences between the students who identify themselves as FNMI and those who don't. Also, we can see few noticeable fluctuations in absenteeism rate, which can be seen in students who have different median neighborhood incomes. That means I'm talking about this category. Now, we have different categories for the median neighborhood income. Like, first is less than $30,000, next is 30 to 59.999 thousand dollars, 60 to 89.99 thousand dollars, 90 to $119,000, and last is $120,000 or more. Now, those who are falling under these categories, we can see the large varied fluctuations. From 10.95, it goes to 5.58.55, and then again it decreases to 10.97, and then again it increases to 18.481. Now, why these noticeable fluctuations are there in the absenteeism rate? We need more data to find the actual reason. So before we proceed to a next slide, a question came into my mind, like, what makes us think that non-FNMI students, those who do not consider themselves as FNMI, have higher absence rate? What could be the probable reasons for that? Now, so the next slide is about my research question 2, and we have a grade 3 student achievement on EQ-AQ assessments. Now, in order to answer this question, I have conducted a scatter plot matrix and correlation matrix, which we will see in the upcoming slides. Like this, all this data may look like an overwhelming data, but there are definitely some interesting interpretations that we will find out in the upcoming slides. All the statistics analysis are done in detail for grade 3. This is for grade 3. Also for grade 6 are included in the upcoming slides. Now for this this research question, we have this data, and EQAO testing. Now that's testing for reading level, writing level, and math level. So for three levels is done in grade 3 and grade 6. And as we all know that these are all the analytics from that. Now everything that is calculated and are shown in this, I mean all the columns are denoted in percentages, and as we can see the percentage sign for each level of EQAQ assessments. And scores of 0 were omitted from the entire set, as 0 indicates that there is no data given by the student or whatsoever. So let's jump to research question number 2. What impact the student absenteeism? Now we're talking about student absenteeism rate and his achievement in test scores, or maybe their achievement in reading, writing, and maths EQ, AQ scores. Now, on the one hand, we are focusing on his absence rate and how it is impacting or not impacting or having some association in the test scores. So we will find it in the next slide. Yes, so the next slide is this is very easy to understand as we have scatter plot metrics of EQ, AQ, absence rate. Now, what is this? This is the absence rate, and instead of doing three different achievement test results or levels, I did all in one. So, this is the absence rate, and this is for reading, this is for writing, and this is for maths level. So all the scores are plotted out here, and this is very easy to analyze. So the scatter plot shows few regression lines that are acutely angled. Like we can see maybe this line and maybe this line that are acutely angled. However, they are not very conclusive. That means we cannot find the original or maybe the real problem or maybe the this behind it. Fine. So some outliners are very far away from the regression lines, and probably that is why they affect the relationship. Now, if we look at these small circles over here, and circles over here, or let's say circles over here, few are there which are very far away from the line. Like if we look consider the distance, they are not close. So if you look at the regression lines, and this is probably the reason that they affect the relationship. Now if you look at the correlation matrix, which will be there in the next slide, it suggests that there is some relationship between EQ, reading, this is the reading level, and writing, but in scatter plot matrix there is not conclusive, and we need more data and we need more statistics to analyze it further. Like we cannot see the it is acutely angled. Neither is this and neither is this. We can only just see two, that two not very conclusive in nature. So the data set is n is equal to 22, which is comparatively small and does not give a clear indication of whether students' absenteeism rate could be the primary root cause for low test scores or not. Though it is a cause or not, still there seems to be maybe some relationship for low test scores. So we'll find this in the next slides. Now, now moving on to the next slide. This is the correlation matrix which of grade 3 right in front of you, and this shows the impact of absenteeism on test scores grade 3 results. Now, to make it more simpler, I shall explain with the help of written data and with the help of my correlation matrix image. Now, with the help of this correlation matrix, it is clear that there is no relationship between reading, writing, and math level, because we cannot see any relationship over here and any relationship over here. But ideally, when the absence rate decreases, the grade or the achievement test results for reading and writing and maths should increase, or it should happen vice versa. But in this matrix, we cannot see that we cannot find any such relationship which is either positive or negative. However, Like when we go here and when we see, then it seems to be some relationship between writing and maths. It is visible. And then we can see because the p-value over here, let me just use the cursor, the p-value over here is 0.011, which is less than 0.05, and that is significant. But what actually is the significance at the writing and math level, that we are not sure. So we can see just writing and math level having some correlation, but what actually is the reason, we are not sure. So it is just maybe suggesting that high scores in writing are, or like they are, or they can be associated and linked with high scores in maths. But what actually the association is, we are pretty not sure, and we need further data and further research to analyze more on this topic. Now this was for the grade 3 correlation matrix. Now, what is the another impact on test scores? So now this has the correlation equations and the regression equations for predicting the impact of absenteeism. So I have written all three equations of reading, writing, and maths. Now, according to this equation, it is very apparent that the absence rate does not impact the three test scores that are reading, writing, and maths levels. So the R square for this equation was very lower than the achievement level, which was predictable from the absence rate in the few slides that we saw. Thus, this is not a very significant relationship. Similarly, for grade 6, we have the total number of students is 21. And again, as on this data is similar to that of data 3, grade 3. And this has the student achievement of EQ, assessments. Now again, this has reading level, writing level, and math level. And then this has got different characteristics like gender, number of schools attended, number of siblings, median neighborhood income, individual education plan, French immersion plan or program, bused to school or not, and self-identified as First Nation, Metis, and Inuit. So this is all the data that we have for grade 6 with total number of 21 students. Now let's find out the second research answer to the research question, that is what was the impact of absenteeism on test scores for the grade 6 results. Now right now on my right hand side we can see the scatter plot matrix, which is denoted by absence rate, reading, writing, and math levels. So in this matrix, like most of the regression lines that we see, all these that we are seeing are horizontal. Over here, over here, over here. But we can see one regression line that is acutely angled, and that is writing level and math level. So I'm talking about this line that is acutely angled. But with the help of correlation matrix, which is there in the next slide, we can say that there is no relationship as such. So this regression line could be possible because of the other outliners. Like we can see few outliners over here, one over there. And because of these outliners, there seems to be no correlation as per the scatter plot matrix. So, or also the data set is n equals to 22, which is comparatively small and does not give a clear indication of whether students' absenteeism is primary cause for low test scores or not. Though it is the cause or not, still there seems to be some relationship for low test scores. Now here comes the absenteeism impact on grade 6 results, and this has got the correlation matrix. Now, according to this correlation matrix, there seems to be no correlation between EQ, AQ reading, writing, and math level. However, we observe in the Pearson correlation that the value over here is negative, like we can see minus symbols, so the value is negative, which may suggest that if the absenteeism rates are higher, the achievement level may go lower, but it is still not conclusive because the p-value is more than 0.05. Now, why absenteeism is not associated with achievement level can also be researched, and that's an interesting topic. Therefore, we can see that there is some correlation between EQ, AQ, like we can see over here reading and writing, and then reading and maths. There is some or little correlationship, but we have no perfect data, so we need to explore further to know what this correlation or significant relationship is all about. Similarly, I have pasted a model summary and of the coefficients for the grade 6 results and the correlation between absenteeism and EQAQ. Reading, writing, and maths was not statistically significant. So the regression equation for predicting the impact of absenteeism are as follows. Like this is for the reading, I'll be just using the cursor. This is for the writing, and this is for the maths. Now, according to this equation, it is clear that the absence rate does not impact the EQ, AQ, writing, reading, and maths level. The R square for all the equations was very less. Therefore, we cannot conclude a significant relationship. Now, in order to answer my research question number 3, I have used a two-way ANOVA to find out the actual answer. So my research question number 3 is, does the type of transport, like if the students is bus to school or not, and self-identification as FNMI has any impact on student absenteeism or not? So now we can see a data, I mean a graph, which shows estimated marginal means of absence rate and was the student bused to school or not. And now we have, is the student self-identified as First Nation, Métis or Inuit? Now this blue line indicates no and this green line indicates yes. So, so in order to answer this question, I made my own research question and I do a two-way ANOVA. Like ANOVA is basically an analysis of variance. It was conducted in SPSS statistics. Now we can see, like in a nutshell, we can see the green line. That means the student is identifying himself as First Nation, Métis or Inuit over here. And if he was not bused to school, the absence rate was below 2%, like 1.6. And if he was bused to school over here, the absence rate increased to 4.3. Now, this is a very interesting data. And how is this even possible? There is a steep and sharp increase right from 1.6 to 4.3. And how is this even possible? Now, second, we see if the student is not identifying himself as First Nation, Métis, or Inuit, there is not much difference, I'll say. But yes, there has been some increase in the absence rate. So if he was not using the bus facility, the absence rate was around approximately 6.9, and once he started using the bus facility, it rose to, or it increased to 7.3. Now this gives us a point to think, how is it even possible that using the bus facility the absence rate is increasing, which should not happen vice versa. Like if a student is using the bus, he should be regular to school, he should have a perfect attendance because he is not relying on any other means of transport except for the school bus. And school bus is not cancelled, it is punctual, it ensures that the student reaches school on time and is regular for his or her classes. So thus, interpreting the graph and few observations that I found out, like if you look at the graph, there is clearly no intersection, like over here and over here. They are not intersecting. The graph lines are not intersecting. Therefore, we can conclude that there is no interaction between the both, like students who identified themselves as FNMI and those who were not. But we can see that the absence rate was higher when the child was bused to schools in both the categories, right? I know in this category it was much more, the difference was much more, but then also if we consider both the groups simultaneously, it was higher. It did not decrease, rather it increased. And when they were not identified as FNMI, okay. Now, ideally, why this is happening is not clear because technically the absence rate or the absenteeism rate should be lower when the child is bused to school or using the bus facility. So still it is not clear why the absence rate is higher when the child is bused to school. And for this we need to further study or do further research on the data to understand the main question. So this was about my research question number 3. Like, what is the relationship and why is the absenteeism rate between the bus facility, students using bus facility and students who are using not? Now, there are few conclusions. I'll turn my camera off because we cannot see the entire slide. Where's the camera option? Yeah. So now there are few conclusions. Now, first of all, the Wall School, which was my school, is a very large school with more number of students, and obviously the more number of students, the more data we have. But one interesting thing I found that no one took the French immersion plan, which was very strange because I thought like the school is in Canada, in Ontario, in Thunder Bay, and besides English, French is the second language. I mean, French is also one of the national languages besides English, and students should be equally interested in taking French. If not all, some would have opted, but to my astonishment, no one took the French immersion plan. Again, when we consider table 1, table 2, there was a huge difference between students who were bused to school and those who were not, and that had a contradictory impact on their absence rate. Now, this shouldn't ideally happen, but why is this happening needs to be more studied and researched on. Now, fourth, students who had more siblings and those students having more siblings attending more than two schools were less absent from school. Now, how is this possible? That's again an interesting data to think. Next is we cannot establish a significant impact of a student being absent and then their achievement in reading, writing, and maths EQ scores. Ideally, if he's being absent, that means he's missing majority of his classes, is not attending the lessons, so his achievement or the test scores should go down, and this is generally what happens. But here we cannot establish any impact which is significant. Now, if you remember about the grade 3 data, there was some correlation between writing and maths, and because of high scores in writing can be linked and associated with high scores in maths. So this was a conclusion from grade 3. It is also very important to note that despite the student being absent, the reading, writing, and the maths EQ AQ scores did not fall or slump. I mean, it should happen generally, but they did not. So now what could be the next possible factor for this? When it comes to grade 6, we can see some relationship between EQ, AQ reading, writing and maths level as the sample size was large. But again, it was not very conclusive in nature. FNMI students had less absence rate when compared to non-FNMI students, and this was another interesting pattern which I found out. Like FNI students should be more absent from school, maybe because of some social stigma, maybe because of some family problems, or any other cultural problems, or maybe anything else that is bothering them, surrounding them. But no, that was not the scenario. Now, those who did not identify themselves remained, like majority of them remained more absent. So these are the few key takeaways from the presentation, the data, and now I'll be starting with the recommendations. Now, though the Wall School was big and we got enough data, still we could not come to a proper analysis in very few groups. Like we talked about bus to school, individual immersion education plan or French immersion plan, as it required more interpretations before jumping to any final conclusions, because there was very less data, and I was interpreting more and more before coming to any final conclusion. Now, more further study on data can be done or research to understand other interactions during different groups. Was there any significant correlation, or was there any association? This should could have been done. Like, we need to find out the reason why students are remaining absent from school, and maybe talk to their parents about it and find out the cause of the reason, like what is bothering them, or what's the main hindrance of them being absent and missing away the classes. Or and for this, I think parents should be the first people whom we need to contact and ask what is bothering them. Now, it is also observed that the absenteeism rates were fluctuating for students having different median neighborhood incomes. So, like, students who belong to different categories had different incomes, and maybe a small open house or something can be conducted to explore more, and we can talk to the parents more, like what could be the another possible factor for them to remain absent. It was very strange to notice that none opted for French, as I also mentioned about this in the previous conclusion slide. The French immersion program was taken by none, and talking to maybe the course head educator, and talking to the maybe the principal, or what's wrong with the course, is the course outline very difficult, are the contents very difficult or not age appropriate. I mean, considering these issues, we can, or might, I mean, we might come to the final conclusion. But then again, that was very strange, as French should have been at least opted by few, as the school is in Canada, and French is an important language that is spoken by majority. So, talking to the course head educator or planner or supervisor, or maybe to the principal, might be able to get through the issue. Now, talking to different bus operators or school bus agencies to find out the reason behind the highest absent rate of students. Like we observed in most of the slides, students who used the bus facility or who were bused to school had the highest absenteeism rates. Now, what could be the possible factor? One point, we can talk to the parents about this, and secondly, we can talk to the bus operator or a bus driver and ask him to find out what the real reason could be. Like, why students are not coming to school? Maybe the bus is using a different direction or a different route, or maybe that bus is not going to the child's nearby home, or maybe the timings are not matching whatsoever. Next, this is very important, like a good healthy relationship between educators and students and parents, like all three, educators, parents, and students, could be like encouraged to reduce the absence rate and eradicate most of the issues. Like, communication with parents is very important. It's always a two-way communication process, and this communication, having talking about child's day-to-day activities to parents, ensures a smooth transition for the students. So this can also, by having a good communication, a parent can keep a track of his child's daily activities, why he's not coming to school, and so can the educator know what are the possible factors of him being absent, and he could just fix that. All feedback, any kind of feedback should be gathered, like what is the good thing about school and education, what can be improved, and anything that needs to be changed, or any other teaching pattern that needs to be implemented, brought in, or just um, that requires a fix can be done. So for this, all feedback must be gathered at regular intervals, like maybe we can fix a time for like once in a month. We can just have the feedback forms filled from the students and parents, and then just go through what is the main cause that all mutual, like what's the main thing that has got the mutual votes, and should be further discussed at team or management meetings, as the school is big and it has got various fluctuations in different groups. And lastly, last but not the least, another last recommendation would be Adhering to the norms of the school, not violating any policies, and having respect toward both FNMI and non-FMI students is vital for the student success rate. So if we ignore any of these, there might be chances like that there might be some chances so that keeping all these recommendations in mind, I think that it would be good. So this was all from my presentation. Thank you so much.